Good evening, and welcome to the 61st annual meeting of the West Pasadena Residents Association. We are very glad you're here. I'm Blaine Kavanaugh, treasurer of the WPRA, and I'll be your host for the first portion of the meeting. I should note that as a courtesy, Pasadena Media is recording tonight's meeting for the benefit of our community, which means we have great microphones and lighting and everything else, and we hope this makes it a more enjoyable meeting for everyone, and you'll have a chance to look at it later in case you think it's really great. A couple of important notes. In the event you need to leave, you can exit out the doors on either side. There is a ramp on this side, and that will take you all the way around the building and back out there. Bathrooms are in the corner in the back, and refreshments continue to be available. This evening we'll have some guest remarks, a little bit of WPRA business. We'll hear from the WPRA president, and then we'll present our main program, Pasadena 101, which is probably why most of you are here, and a chance to meet our new city leaders. We hope you'll be able to stay until the end of the meeting, where there will be a time for Q&A, and also we hope a chance to mingle with some of those city leaders after the close of the formal meeting. But now, let's officially open our meeting with the presentation of the colors, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Those were the cadets of our own Blair High School Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps under instruction Sergeant First Class Betsy Cuevas. Thank you. We have a number of guests this evening, and because we have so many, I hope I get them all right, and I apologize in advance if I've missed anyone. But our Mayor, Victor Gordo, is here. West Pasadena District 6 Councilman Steve Madison. Pasadena Vice Mayor Felicia Williams. Pasadena School Board member from West Pasadena, Dr. Yarma Velasquez. Representing Catherine, I don't know her that well. Supervisor Catherine Barger was her field rep, Susie Nemer. Unfortunately, Susie is still here, but will have to leave. Anne Marie Hickenbottom is here representing State Assemblyman Chris Holden. Teresa Lamb Simpson is representing Congressman Adam Schiff. And we have Pasadena City Manager Miguel Márquez. The General Manager of Pasadena Water and Power, Sidney Jackson. Pasadena Fire Chief Chad Augustin, Library Director Tim McDonald, Housing Director for Pasadena Bill Wong, State Commissioner and former Pasadena Police Department Lieutenant Falante Riddle, Falante is running for State Assembly. And finally, it would be amiss to not mention Bill and Claire Bogard, who are also here. To all of you, elected officials, city leaders, department heads, thank you for joining us this evening. We appreciate your support and your participation. We'll hear from some of these guests in just a moment, but first we should thank those who contributed to this meeting, starting with Marantha School, who not only provided the room, but set it up, the tables, the chairs, part of the refreshments, and have done an outstanding job in making West Pasadena look good. So thank you to Marantha and Gil Dominguez. Pasadena Media, I already mentioned, is helping out in a great way. WPRA editor Chuck Hudson coordinated many of the exhibits. You also appreciate Chuck Hudson because he's behind the Pasadena Quarterly News that the WPRA publishes 4 times a year. And thanks to the several WPRA board members who have worked to make this evening enjoyable and informative, especially Jeffrey Baum, Susan Kenny, and Joan Hurst. And you may want to clap one more time because we'd especially like to thank all of you for being here, for supporting the WPRA, and for caring about our community. Thank you. Now, before we move on to a little bit of WPRA business, we'd like to take advantage of the presence of some of these city leaders to hear from them, starting with Mayor Gordo. Victor?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. How's everybody doing? Let me first say that it's an honor and a privilege to serve as your mayor, and I want to thank you for that privilege and honor. I'll just keep my remarks brief and say that we feel good about where Pasadena is. Following the pandemic, we're emerging from the pandemic, and we now have a solid city team. I don't think how many people realized what our city council has grappled with over the last few years in terms of what could have been a very unstable moment in time in our city's history was actually a very stable time in our city's history, given the circumstances. But just to give you some numbers, we worked in the last couple of years with 3 different city managers, 2 fire chiefs, 4 police chiefs, 2 planning directors, and 3 water and power directors. Overall, we had 16 changes in the executive branch, if you will, department heads or senior managers. And so you can imagine what we've dealt with at City Hall in terms of the changing dynamic during the pandemic, evolving out of the pandemic, and now I'm happy to say that we finally see the pandemic in our rearview mirror, but always remaining vigilant. In terms of the city's economy, I'm happy to report that Pasadena is faring very well. Even in the midst of 5-6%, what was in 2022, 9% in June of 22, 9% inflation. But even at 5%, we are still being very vigilant with your dollars. The city one of our priorities was to ensure that we replenished the rainy day account, and I'm happy to report that we've done that. We spent the rainy day account down by about $30 million during the pandemic, and now we've replenished it to pre-COVID levels. Just to give you an idea of the impact of inflation on the city's budget, for every 2% rise in the CPI, it's about a $6 million hit to the city's budget. And so in the midst of 4 to 6%, you're talking about $12 to $18 million potentially to the city's budget. That's the bad news. The good news is that our economy has really shown a lot of improvement. We've gone from a general fund, and those are the dollars that we have discretion on, a general fund of about $269 million in 2021 to today, $303 million. And that's bolstered by sales tax, by the hotel tax, all close to, well, the hotel tax is expected to exceed pre-COVID levels. It dipped down to about $6.2 million a year, and that's the tax that we collect on hotel visits. By next year, we're anticipating that it'll be at higher than pre-COVID levels at about $18 million. Pre-COVID, $17 million was about the high water mark. And that tells us that people are coming back to visit Pasadena. That tells us that our business community is faring well. And that tells us that the economy in Pasadena showed a lot of resilience. Issues going forward that you should all, well, I shouldn't say you should all, I know you're all focused on, the 710 relinquishment. You all know that we took control of the 710 corridor back from the state. Let's keep in mind that that initial step was relinquishment, meaning turning ownership back to the city, but that initial step is only for transportation purposes. We still have to undertake the planning process for what we are going to do with that land, and then go back to the California Transportation Commission, to the state, and present that plan to them. And a big part of what we're going to have to show is feasibility in terms of what we plan to do with it. But we can't make any changes to that land beyond transportation without first doing that. And so I encourage all of you to be vigilant as we go through the planning process, as I know you will be, and to make it to be active in the process, because there's opportunities for open space, for housing, for all of the things that we know can happen there. And let's keep in mind, and I'll wrap it up with this, let's keep in mind that that corridor, people have talked about it as a gateway to West Pasadena. I remind people that it's not just a gateway, an important gateway to West Pasadena, but it's also an important gateway to the east in Old Pasadena in our business district. It's also an important public safety gateway to Huntington Hospital. And importantly, it's a transportation corridor. And so all of these issues, infrastructure, financing, all of these issues are going to have to be thought about and planned for. And so I look forward, together with my colleagues, listening to all of you and gaining your thoughts as we take this important step of restitching our city. So thank you all very much. Again, it's an honor and a privilege to serve as your mayor, and I thank you for that honor and privilege. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. And next up is Steve Madison, our own council member from District 6.
Thank you very much. Well, I want to first and foremost thank you for having me at your annual meeting. And as I say every year, the work that WPRA does is so very important to what happens at City Hall, what happens at the City Council. WPRA really is the granddaddy of them all, if you will, in terms of neighborhood associations. The last time I checked, there were 96 active neighborhood associations in Pasadena. So we're a community that cares deeply about civic involvement. And these are real working, functioning groups. But still with that, the WPRA really is at the top of the class, and grateful for all the work. I know you have some outgoing board members. I want to extend gratitude to them and congratulate any new board members that are coming on. This is really important, outstanding work. As the mayor mentioned, it's been a busy year at City Hall, and I agree completely that we've hopefully extracted ourselves from the pandemic, from COVID. So grateful, as I know my colleagues were, that we had a public health department to help us navigate that. I just want to mention 2 or 3 other big things from the last year since the last annual meeting that I think WPRA can celebrate and we all share credit for. The mayor mentioned the first, and that is the sort of repatriation of the 710 trench. And this is something that many of us have worked for decades on, and it came to fruition last August when the state gave us the deed to the property, along with a check for $5 million. And how often do you acquire a piece of property along with a multi-million-dollar check? And now, as the mayor described, we have the work ahead of us of revisioning and planning, and we've established a 710 working group. I think they've now renamed themselves in one of their very first meetings as sort of the Reconnecting Pasadena group. And I want to share with you that in our district, in West Pasadena, unsurprisingly, we had, I think, as many applicants to that working group as there were from the entire rest of the city. We have such a special interest and long-time investment in the 710. So when I made the one appointment that each district council member received, I have one friend for life and 24 enemies now because I wasn't able to appoint everyone. I should actually correct that. One friend for 2 weeks and 24 enemies for life. But what we have decided to do is form a West Pasadena 710 working group, and we're inviting all of the other applicants, each of whom was, really supremely qualified and would be a great member to participate. And you'll be hearing more about that as we roll out that announcement of our West Pasadena working group. Other thing I want to echo the recognition for Bill and Claire Bogard. And since your last annual meeting, we were so honored and proud, the mayor and I and our colleagues, to rename the beautiful courtyard at City Hall Bill and Claire Bogard Courtyard. And I want to just recognize our friends, Bill and Claire, again for that. And finally, to continue the mayor's theme of change, we have seen a great deal of change at City Hall in terms of the staff with the new city manager and so many new city department heads. But with that change comes great opportunity, and I think you'll witness firsthand the sort of dynamism and creativity and intellect and dedication of some of these great new city officials that we have. I'll also tell you politically, if you look at our political infrastructure, the mayor and I are the old timers on the city council. I think if you add up Victor and my service on the council, I think we have a longer tenure between the two of us than the other 6 members on the city council combined. And sort of because of a quirk, but also because sadly we lost unexpectedly our dear friend John Kennedy last year. Next year in the elections, 6 of the 8 positions on the council will be up for election. So it'll be a very important time for, as I know WPRA does play a role in terms of sponsoring forums and spreading information about the elections. And of course, every other seat seems to be up as well. Our state assembly seat, our state senate seat are both coming up soon. Our county supervisor is coming up. Our Congressman Adam Schiff is moving on to the U.S. Senate. We're trying to. So it's a busy, busy time, and we need you more than ever at WPRA. So thank you so much, and thanks for having me.
And now we have, when I don't kick the mic, we have Dr. Yarma Velazquez, a school board member for our district.
Hi, welcome neighbors. My name is Yarma Velazquez, and I'm very excited to be here in my first meeting as an official PUSD board member. We are celebrating. This is the best season of the year to be involved with schools, as we have multiple ceremonies, graduations, promotions. So this is a happy time for all the families in Pasadena, and I'm so happy to share it with you. We're also just celebrated Teachers Appreciation, and we're very supportive of our teachers. And I am here to share 3 great accomplishments of Pasadena Unified this year, and to have a big ask for all of you. So to start, I would like to say that one of our proudest accomplishments for this year is that we were able to give teachers a 10% salary increase, which is the largest, thank you, salary increase in our district's history. Not only that, we're ready for negotiations for our next academic year, and we are being happy to work with all of our bargaining units. Second, maybe some of you were able to attend. Our long 10-year investment in the arts has produced a wonderful production called Into the Woods. Any of you were able to attend? It was a fantastic production that incorporated the work of all 4 of our high schools. It was in collaboration with the Pasadena Playhouse. It was a fantastic production, and our students were able to perform in front of over 9,000 spectators and guests. It was a fantastic event, and I encourage you to support Pasadena Unified Art and go next year to our musicals. They're great. Finally, I would like to talk about our 5-year planning. We just finalized our strategic plan for the next 5 years. We have aggressive goals, and we're going to start implementation in the fall. And as we move into this process of transition, I hope that you are part of it. So I would like to ask you, and raise your hands, how many of you have been in a PUSD campus in the last couple of years? If you have, raise your hand. Fantastic. We have many opportunities for you to come and engage, because these are our schools. And I'm very purposeful in the way that I'm using our, because our communities depend on you, our families, and the families that we serve in Pasadena Unified depend on you to be engaged citizens, even if it's to contact me and tell me that our grass needs to be cut. We know it. We're working on it. We're buying new equipment for a 3rd crew. So I just wanted to address that. But so please engage with us. There's many opportunities for you to volunteer, to come and read, to attend the performances, to keep coming and engaging with us, because our students are incredibly valuable. They're the future of our city, and I really hope that you get to love our schools as much as I do. So that is my ask. So please, this next year, come to one of our schools, come to our events, and really see some of the work that we're doing. Before I go, I would like to also address the strategic plan signals a new era for PUSD, where we are going to focus on consolidating our success and evaluating practices that no longer work. And as changes happen in the leadership level, I know that there is a lot of speculation and uncertainty, but I can assure you that our teams are working every day to put our students first and our communities first. Even in the process of transition, we are working every day very hard for this community that's yours. And so, thank you so much for this invitation, and I hope I can come back next year.
Thanks to all of you who took the time to let us know how things are going. It sounds like they're going well. Now on to the short business portion of our meeting, the annual election of the WPRA directors or board members. The nominee slate was mailed to current supporters a few weeks ago. They are also listed on the back of your program. So if present, Will the nominees please stand and remain standing as I read their names? Dan Beal, Dave Bice, Blaine Kavanaugh, Evan Davis, Pete Ewing, Mick Hansen, Kenyon Harbison, Joan Hurst, Carlos Javalera, Susan Kinney, Rick Madden, Mark Mastromateo, Lee Wallace, and Linda Zinn. The nominees may be seated. Are there any nominees from the floor? Hearing none, will all those in favor of electing the nominees as presented to be directors of the WPRA please raise their hand? Thank you. Will those opposed please raise their hand? Thank you. Any abstentions? I see one. Thank you. We have a board. The board itself selects the officers, and we have selected Evan Davis to continue as our president. So please welcome our returning president of the WPRA, Evan Davis.
I don't want to stand too long between you all and a really good program. I've only been with the WPRA for, I think, about 4 years, and I've been incredibly impressed with the dedication and quality of the people who serve this community. They're all volunteers. They give an amount of time that probably you'd all be surprised about. And there are a lot of experts as well. I mean, you know a lot of the names that go to every meeting and make sure that the people who live in this community are well represented. So, you know, I'm happy to serve in the role as president. Frankly, I know less than most of the people on the board who've been there for decades, and I learned something new in each meeting. What we've been focusing on in the last year is, frankly, primarily the ditch, and I will hold my tongue. I don't yet know how it's going to turn out for our community. I don't know how many voices from West Pasadena are really represented and whether the result is going to be one that we like, because we haven't seen the process work out. What I will promise you is that our voice will be as loud as it possibly can be, because the ditch isn't just a gateway, although it is West Pasadena. And it is an existential issue for our group, and we're going to keep fighting to make sure that whatever decisions are made not only are good for the city of Pasadena, but are good for us. So we're committed to doing that. There are other issues that we're looking at as well, but that's certainly number one on our radar. And we're committed to continuing to make sure that we participate in every way that we can and that our voices are heard. So anyway, moving on from that, I enjoyed my first year. It's a challenge holding this role. I agreed to serve another year because, again, I think the organization is important and does great work, and I'm happy to give my time to it. So moving on to the next thing on the agenda, we have 2 awards, and neither one of these persons probably knows they're getting an award. But there are frankly a number of people in the community each year that we could give awards to, and it really means something when we hand these awards out. The first recipient is Taka, and I toyed with the idea of surprising Steve Madison and saying you should be giving this award, but frankly, I know although I've litigated against him, he can be incredibly pithy But I don't think he could be pithy when he's talking about how fantastic Taka has been for him, but also for our community. So the award states with deep appreciation for a quarter century, I mean, she's been doing this since 1999, I understand, of outstanding service, for expert advocacy and tireless dedication to residents and businesses of Pasadena's District 6, and for working with city government to solve issues. This award, Taka, is for you. So if you would come up, we would appreciate it. The second award is to someone who's near and dear to my heart, including because a couple of years ago, I was asked to start thinking about going from being vice president to president. And thank goodness this person said that he was willing to continue working as president, because he brought this organization through an incredibly difficult time, which was the pandemic. We really were not sure what we were going to look like, what we would do for the community, whether we were going to meet. And frankly, it's amazing financially how strong the WPRA is, and also how we were able to continue fighting as hard as we do for the people in our community. And it really does come down to the leadership of Dan Beal. And stay where you are. I'm going to walk over and give this to you in the end. But Dan he's still a valuable member of the board and continuing to do work. But the long tenure, both in the organization as well as president, I don't know that anyone served as long as Dan has in that role. So our award says, with deep appreciation for a record of 4 years of exceptional leadership as president, for many years as a dedicated WPRA board director, and for multiple contributions to enhance and improve the quality of life in Pasadena, the West Pasadena Residents Association Community Service Award is going to Dan.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Taka. Thank you, Dan. By the way, if you would like to be one of these people who gets an award or gets to speak at the microphone, we are always looking for board members. And as Evan says, you don't need to be expert. You just need to be interested. So let us know. Our theme for this year's meeting is Pasadena 101, Meet Our New City Leaders. It was described as an opportunity to hear from the new city leaders and to learn how to more effectively access city services, resolve issues, get information, help shape city policy, and of course, help make Pasadena an even better place to live, work, play, and raise a family. Now, if there's someone who can do all that, explain all that in the hour or so that we have, it might be Jeff Baum, who is going to, as both a longtime WPRA board member and past president, introduce you to some people who are going to answer those questions. I'm leaving for the evening, turning it over to Jeff. Thank you all. Jeff?
Thank you, Blaine. If our panelists can come up to the stage and we'll get started. But the thought behind this meeting is that this is a pivotal moment in the history of Pasadena. We've been blessed with extraordinary leadership for many years. Bill Bogard and others also recruited amazing city staff to help run the city. Cynthia Kurtz, Phil Hockey, Michael Beck, Steve Mermel. And I don't know if you've been following the news, Pasadena has just embarked on a new budget cycle, and our city is looking at putting together a budget in the amount of $1.2 billion. And so it's the elected officials have all the easy work. I wanted to take an opportunity, but I got to credit our elected officials for recruiting some new extraordinary leaders to the city of Pasadena. And these are the unsung heroes of the city. When we interact as residents, we actually don't call, Steve Madison isn't the one that fixes a problem when a tree falls down in the middle of our street and or knocks over a power line. It's the city and the staff that carry it out. And we've been blessed with very extraordinary city staff over the years. And we've lived through a lot of challenges over the last several years, from storms to confronting economic and other crises through the city. So we're going to have a conversation with three of our remarkable city leaders who are relatively new to the city. They're going to talk a little bit about what drew them to Pasadena, but also a little bit about their departments and how we can best success it. We'll have about 15 or 20 minutes at the beginning, and then they've each told me that they would welcome to have audience questions and hear directly from the residents of the community. So give me a second. So we'll start, and I was blown away when I read the news of the successful recruitment process that we had Steve Ramel, who was part of our city government for decades, and then he was preceded by Michael Beck, who was an extraordinary city leader, and Cynthia Kurtz and Phil Hockey before that. And I said, how are we going to fill those shoes? Well, the city went to work, and they did a national search, and they recruited Judge Miguel Márquez to be our new city manager. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to welcome Judge Márquez. It's in your programs, but I'll read you a little bit of his background so that you can see. Before joining the city of Pasadena in 2022, Judge Márquez served as the Chief Operating Officer for Santa Clara County. He's a previous Associate Justice in the California 6th District Court of Appeals and the County Counsel for Santa Clara County. He was the General Counsel for the San Francisco Unified School District. He was a Deputy City Attorney in San Francisco. He's a native of Sacramento and holds a law degree from UC Berkeley, a master's in public policy from the JFK School at Harvard University, and a bachelor's degree in public policy from Stanford University. So please join me in welcoming our city manager, Miguel Márquez. So Miguel, could you first tell us, what does a city manager do, and what would you like the residents of West Pasadena to know about the city government, and particularly the work that you do as city manager?
Thank you for the question, and thank you all for having me here tonight. It's truly a privilege to serve as city manager. To get right to your question, I think the most important thing that a city manager does is hire people. So hire the executive staff, hire the department heads. For example, hire the police chief, which is something I've done since I came here. Hire the general manager of water and power, a very important role that's in our city, because not all cities have their own water and power, and I think you all know we have to keep the water flowing and the lights on. Hire most people, certainly at the executive level, and have responsibility for other employees. And it's really about people. People make a city more than anything else. We have about 2,300 employees. And the way we're structured is you have a city council elected by the voters who appoint 3 people. They appoint the city attorney, who has her own office, the city clerk, who assists the city council with all of their meetings and everything else and organizes all the work, and then the city manager. And the city manager has responsibility for all the different department heads. So apart from putting the team together and being responsible for the administrative side of the city running and the 2,300 people, I think the next biggest and most important task is what was mentioned just earlier, and that's putting together a budget. It's the city manager's recommended budget that goes to the city council for approval. And as you mentioned, it went this year to in excess of $1.2 billion. And if you really think about a budget, what it really is, a financial plan for the next fiscal year. We look and do our best to understand how much revenue we're going to get from a bunch of different sources, and we look at what do we want to do with those revenues, how do we plan to spend them to provide services to all of you. So that's a process we've been engaged in for months and months. A big part of it is just estimating the revenues during this difficult, era that we're all in, and then trying our level best to find the best way to spend the money to meet all of your needs in a city. And I'll give one example. Don't want to put any pressure on our council members who are here, but we have talked in a retreat, and I think there is support as an example. I think a lot of you have seen the winter has really taken a toll on our streets. I think a lot of us, if you're like me, drive around and you have to get around the potholes. And we have a program where we maintain our streets. We put about, I think it's $5.4 million a year into our streets, but clearly more is needed. And so putting the budget together, we went through a process, but I think the council is likely to approve on Monday an additional $6 million to really get our streets to a better place, because we all share the streets, we all use them. It's foundational to the society, to our city running. And so it's just a privilege to be able to put those kind of ideas in a budget and present it to the council and seek their approval. And lastly, as I said, it's the administrative. If you read the city charter, the city manager has responsibility for the administrative side of government. So there's a lot of different duties that the charter tells me I have to do, but ultimately it's trying to put that team together, trying to answer the community's needs, trying to be responsive to all of you, and bring about, most importantly, we live in a democracy. The voters elect the council. They set the policy, and it's my job as the person appointed by the council to bring to fruition the policies that they've enacted. So that's, in a nutshell, what a city manager does.
Sure, and then, and Sidney and Tim, you're going to be asked the same question. Can you share first, what drew you to Pasadena to uproot your life from Northern California, and then can you share some first impressions of your first year here?
Sure. So that's sort of an easy question, because it was clearly the gravitational pull of the center of the universe.
That's right. Credit the mayor. Yes.
I say that only half joking, because really it's a couple of things. So everybody has a work life and a personal life. So on the personal side, I grew up in Sacramento, California. And then, as you mentioned earlier, left there when I was 18 to go to college in the Bay Area. I did go to the East Coast for a couple of years for a master's degree, but apart from that, spent 30 plus years in the Bay Area. So it was a big move after so many years in the Bay Area to come down here. On the personal side, I'd always wanted to come down here, largely because I come from a large extended family. I literally have dozens and dozens and dozens of cousins and aunts and uncles here in Los Angeles County, mostly in Long Beach. Even when I was in law school, I came down to Los Angeles and did a summer at Paul Hastings, which is one of the big firms here in downtown Los Angeles. And I loved it. I left that summer in 1995, driving back up north saying, I'm coming back to Los Angeles. It was a great place. Ultimately, I made the decision to go with the law firm up in Northern California and made my career up there. But I always had in the back of my mind, I want to come back and be closer to extended family. You heard some of my career path, and at the end of the day, after having been on the court and making the decision to come and be the chief operating officer for the county of Santa Clara, most people don't do that. And the reason I did it is because I was very familiar with the county of Santa Clara. I had been its chief legal officer for a number of years, and I knew that that was the best public sector job available. And that's what I really wanted to do. What makes me tick is service to the public. And so I made that move, but I always wanted to come down to Southern California, and I said, I will only go if I find the best public sector job in Southern California. So when this opportunity arose, you look at it, and I looked first and foremost to the mayor, the vice mayor and the council were. And as I read who they were, I said, I think my values align with them. And so I submitted my papers, got the interview, came down, and I think I interviewed in the morning, and then I had the rest of the afternoon to sort of look around, and so I got in my car and drove around. That's all you have to do, is drive around Pasadena and realize how special it is. We put a lot of work into, maintaining historic buildings, historic houses, just so much thoughtfulness in building this city. We got to give credit to those who, 100 years ago had this grand idea, and for everybody else for maintaining it. One thing I didn't realize that I like so much about it, that only came to my attention later, because sometimes you don't notice things by omission, but we don't have here something that so many other cities have. And what we don't have is graffiti. By and large, there's some, but when we see it, we have systems in place. I think it's called the Citizen Service Center app, and you can, you put it on your phone, say, hey, there's graffiti here, and I understand it gets wiped away in 24 to 48 hours. But anyhow, to see the beauty of Pasadena, all of its historic buildings, everything that was here, I just said, what a privilege it would be to be city manager. So I went forward with it, was grateful for the offer that was made by the city council, and have been here. And my first impressions is everything I thought was possible. I saw every component of what an ideal city could be. We're one of the few cities that have a public health department, and you all saw how important that was during the pandemic. It's us, the city of Long Beach, the city of Berkeley. And I think there's just about 500 cities in California, so only 3 out of almost 500. It's pretty unique. I think, we are every day working on homelessness, but I think relative to others in the region, we're doing really well. And a big part of the reason for that is we're one of, I think, 4 what are called COCs, or continuums of care. It's a requirement of the Housing and Urban Development federal side, HUD. It's how money flows in and how you do work on homelessness. So the 4 in LA County are us, I think it's Glendale, Long Beach, and then everybody else. That's the county of LA, the city of LA, and about 84 other cities are in the 4th COC. So having that autonomy to really take on the work that we need to do to address the homelessness issue in a more independent way has made a big difference. And those are the kind of things, when I looked at the structure of government, when I looked at this position, when I looked at this city, I thought I could really make a difference, and that's why I'm here.
Well, thank you for that. Mr. Jackson, just to start, and as a preface, and I'm going to credit Steve Madison here, many of us in the room will recall about 25 years ago, there was a call among some to take our public utility and sell it off to a private company, perhaps Edison or something like that, to theoretically save the city money and preserve some taxpayer dollars. And came very close, and Steve and others said, no, we need to keep our own municipal utility. And within a few years, there was the Enron crisis and others that really brought a lot of municipalities to their knees. And the state of California suffered immeasurably. Pasadena seems to have been able to pull through. So if you could tell us a little bit about Pasadena Water and Power today, and how it's organized, and what do the citizens of Pasadena, what do the residents of Pasadena need to know about PWP today, and tell us about and I'll get to the other ones, but if you could give us an overview and share some thoughts.
Thank you, Jeffrey. A lot of nuggets in that long question, right. But let me just introduce myself real quickly. Yeah. I'm proud to be here, very pleased to be here today.
I am it went past his bio. I didn't realize that. I do want to introduce you to Mr. Sidney Jackson. Before joining Pasadena Water and Power, again, we conducted a national search. I credit our city manager for this. He served as the chief operations officer and deputy general manager at Austin, Texas Energy. Previously, he was the chief operations officer in Rochester, New York for their public utility. He holds a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from Kansas State University and an MBA from the University of Missouri. So I don't know if there's anybody from Mizzou here, but he's got good credentials for that. Mr. Jackson.
Yeah, thank you. That is Rochester, Minnesota, where I was the Chief Operating Officer.
Oh my gosh,
But
that's my fault. Sorry about
most
that.
recently, I did transition to Pasadena from Austin Energy, one of the largest municipally owned utilities in the United States. And it's been my pleasure every minute that I've been here in Pasadena. Pasadena is full of rich traditions, and I'm just amazed and as I get to explore and experience them daily. We do have challenges. We do have opportunities in the utility space, the electric space, and the water space. It is an interesting time. Fortunately, I've been in the business for a number of years, starting my career as an electrical engineer out of engineering school. But to your point about in-run and keeping the utility, I am so pleased, and I'm sure in hindsight, the community is pleased that we did keep the local utility. Looking at Pasadena Water and Power, and I guess what I would like to communicate, I have some statistics here, and I can go through some of those statistics, but kind of statistics are dry oftentimes. What I'd like to really focus on is the people, the professionals, the community members that have dedicated their professional life to serving this community. And let me just start with the mission statement, or excuse me, the vision statement of Pasadena Water and Power, and I'll just read an excerpt of it. Pasadena Water and Power will be an exceptional partner in Pasadena's prosperous future and contribute to the quality of life in Pasadena. That is one of the things we surely do from a water and power perspective, the incorporation of water and power being back to 1906 as I looked it up. But before we get into the statistics, the common bridge, and I just give you a qualitative example as I was speaking with one of the water quality or water treatment personnel. And one of the things this person said, which I think edifies or embodies some of our mission statement and vision, is I live in Pasadena. We were at a particular water facility. Heck, I grew up, and I only live just a few miles from here. I work in Pasadena, but I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would be responsible for the water quality that not only I drink, but my family drinks and my community members drink. Investment in the community, participation in the community, and being part of the community. And I have found that to be a common practice, a common sensibility in Pasadena Water and Power. And it's my pleasure to lead as the general manager of this group. So just a few facts about water and power. Just the 101, I believe, is what you
please.
kind of asked for.
How big are you? How many people? What departments?
Let me just start from the water, and I'll just give you the lightning version, the lightning round version of this. Approximately 65% of our water is imported. Pasadena Water and Power has been a leader, and one of the things that attracted me to this community as its regional leadership, its national leadership, its national recognitions. But the Metropolitan Water District was in part formed by many of the people in Pasadena as a legacy. 65% of our water is imported, but from an environmental stewardship standpoint, we do have natural resources with the Raymond Basin. We do have groundwater there, and we do support it from a sustainability standpoint. In fact, even as I sit here this day, we are working with MWD to replenish the basin from a conservation standpoint. That is a big deal. In this time where we have record snowmelt in the north, and we are using that snowmelt in coordination with MWD to replenish from a conservation standpoint. So that kind of gives you the environmental vision, some of the environmental things we're doing. Also, just another quick statistic, we use as a community less water than we did in 1950. A lot of technological innovations that have helped, but it also goes to the stewardship of and the environmental consciousness of this community. So kudos to the community, kudos to the historical leadership of water and power, and to our governance bodies as well. A couple statistics. Again, these statistics mean little without the professionals that stand by and support the utility in the community. A number of wells, 520 miles of water main, 14 reservoirs, 110 million gallons of capacity in those reservoirs, groundwater treatment facilities, 38,000 meters and 28,000 acre-feet of annual water demand. In terms of current initiatives, I've already mentioned the replenishment of groundwater. Sunset Well and treatment facilities is a prospective project on the horizon. Groundwater spreading basins expansion, another prospective project. So those are some of the things we have moving on the.
And how many employees at Pasadena Water and Power, roughly?
Nominally 450 dedicated and motivated employees.
Great. Well, thank you. And again, and I'm going to talk to Mr. McDonald next. Think about questions, and our guest said no question is off limits, but it has to be a question, not a speech. A question.
One more thing on the electric side. Again, we have some of the same challenges. Over 700 miles of electric distribution, transmission voltages. We do a lot on the water side that is from a renewable portfolio standard. We are going more green. We just initiated an initiative to procure more green power. We're going through an integrated resource plan to help us plan for the future, and we're planning pathways that help us meet and get to a 2030 declaration of 100% green. So that is a pathway that we are technologically working through and putting pen to paper. The electric system is complex. The issues facing the nation, facing the region, facing the local community are indeed interesting times. Just now in the industry, we have surpassed, renewable generation has surpassed coal generation on a national basis. That's a tremendous threshold that we have just passed. And I just leave you with that we have diverse resources. We've got hydropower from the Hoover Dam allocation, wind, solar, natural gas. We are ceasing our operations in the near term, in the near future for IPP, our coal facility. We'll be exiting that position as we approach 2025, 2027. We have a nuclear position in Palo Verde, a variety of resources. So the water and power on both the electric and the water side are working ardently across many fronts. And sorry I took so long.
Oh, no, not at all.
But it's a big department with big responsibilities.
And before I get to Tim, tell us, what's a typical day in the life of the general manager of Pasadena Water and Power?
It's good. I get to work with Miguel as the city manager. I get to work with a lot of other city staff. We collaborate, but supporting the community is what it is all about. Trying to position the utility from an operations standpoint to meet the needs of the community. And it is challenging.
Yeah. One thing I've always appreciated is that actually our utility in water and power is not a faceless bureaucracy. When I've actually called the department for a question or help with something, I actually get a call or an email back from an individual, not from an answering service based in another part of the country or another part of the world. So I appreciate that. Tim McDonald, our head of the library services, I believe that the extension of financial support that the city voted on last fall was overwhelmingly, there was overwhelming community support for the library system, and I wanted to give you a chance to talk a little bit about our library system now, and that the community is continuing to help fund it, and then and what you would like the community to know about the Pasadena Public Library System. But before we get there, Tim has been spent 11 years with the Las Vegas Clark County Library District, and he joined the Pasadena Library System as manager of library services. Subsequently, he's been promoted to acting deputy director of libraries and information services, and now is acting director of library and information services. He holds degrees from Swarthmore College and DePaul University, and a master's degree in library information services from the University of North Texas. So Tim, tell us about the libraries.
Thanks, Jeff, and I'd like to thank the West Pasadena Residents Association for allowing me to participate in your meeting tonight. It's wonderful to be here. I'll talk a little bit about my background and what brought me to Pasadena, but I think I'd like to talk mostly about the library and your question about what we're doing with the funds that we've received from the support of the residents through the Measure L funding that came about last November and where we are now. So I did join the city in 2016, came from the public library system in Clark County, Nevada. My first time visiting Pasadena was some friends that lived here in West Pasadena, and that was the impression that I got the first time I came. What a wonderful place it is to be. The degree that you mentioned from DePaul University was my teaching degree. My first career was as a public school teacher, 5th grade, Chicago Public Schools, 25 students, about 9 languages in my classroom. So it was a real education in inclusion, diversity, equity. And those are values that are really important to me and that really resonated with me and I see here in Pasadena and attracted me to this city. I grew up in New Jersey. My story is kind of a westward migration that brought me to California, and I'm very happy to finally be here. I grew up in a small town in a historic home, and the historic buildings have always been important to me. So getting to work in a Myron Hunt designed building, and I currently live in a much more modest, but John Pugsley designed modernist home. So my love for and my intimacy with Pasadena's Starchitects is something that really attracted me to this position too. I'm very, very, very happy to be here. You were right, we had an overwhelming support for the library services renewal measure last November. 84.6% of voters said yes to renewing that measure that was initially supported by voters in 1993. This was the 4th time voters have approved this measure. And this year, believe it or not, was by the highest margins ever. So it really says a lot about the value that the citizens place on the library system. We are facing in our department a very interesting kind of double whammy right now, right? We lived through the pandemic and kind of the nimble response that we had to make to that, to continue library services, and then the very devastating closure of Central Library upon finding out that it's constructed of unreinforced masonry. It is stable, but it is not safe to be in the event of a moderate-sized earthquake. That is why the building was closed in 2021. So we are hard at work to get that building reopened as soon as possible. We're currently in the design phase of that process. We have an architectural firm leading a design team to create a plan for retrofitting the building and making necessary renovations that will protect the historic character of the building that we all love so much, while also making some enhancements that will bring us into the next century and keep that library going for the next century. The design phase is a long process, take us about 2 years. It is fully funded and won't cost the residents of Pasadena anything, thanks to Assemblyman Holden and a $9 million earmark from the California state budget, with a lot of support from Mayor Gordo, Council Member Madison, and others who wrote letters of support. We have that design phase fully funded. The end of that design phase, which will last about 2 years until 2025, then we'll enter the construction phase pending funding. So that is the big work ahead of us right now, is to get a cost estimate for what this construction will cost and to raise the funds necessary to do the construction. The library measure funding is not for capital improvement. It is for the operations of the library. You are guaranteed library services as a result of voting yes for that library measure. Your neighborhood branches need to be open a minimum of 5 days a week, or none of that tax can be collected. So we currently have the neighborhood branches open 6 days a week. We have no plans to change that, And we're really happy to say that staff is continuing to deliver outstanding library services in our 10 neighborhood library branches. We have some fantastic ones here on the west side, and I'd specifically like to thank some support groups that are critical to their success. The Linda Vista Library Associates and the San Rafael Library Associates are incredible partners and support library programming and some really great additions to the decor and furniture in our libraries too that are really popular among our visitors. So can't thank those groups enough. There's also a lot of people in the audience right now that were part of the campaign that supported libraries. And I didn't see more supporting library campaign signs in any part of the town as much as I saw in West Pasadena when I would drive around. So I thank West Pasadena very much for your support of that initiative last year. What's happening in libraries right now is amazing. And I invite you to sign up for our newsletter if you don't already receive it. I believe there's some copies in the back of the room. You can go to the website and get one delivered to your email box. Our website is www.pasadenapubliclibrary.net. Pasadena Public, and you can find out more information about everything that's happening in the libraries there. But we've got something for everybody. Right now in May, we're celebrating Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Every district in the city has got events happening in their libraries for all ages. Starting tomorrow, we'll be celebrating Pride Month with events and crafts throughout the city. We will have a summer edition of our popular One City, One Story program where we invite the entire city to join us in reading the same novel and come together to discuss the themes of the book. We're reading a wonderful book called LA Weather by best-selling author Maria Amparo Escadon. I would like to give Jeff his own copy. Wow. If you would like a free copy of that book, go to any library starting June 3rd, starting this Saturday, and we'll give you a free copy while supplies last. And you can join a book club and discuss the book in English or in Spanish throughout the summer. And our fantastic staff is developing a whole series of programs around the themes of that book, which we invite you to join. Those are some of the events that spring right to the top of my mind that are kind of more public facing. The official name of our department is the Department of Libraries and Information Services. So behind the scenes, the library staff is a big partner with the rest of our city departments in providing municipal information services. So when you've got a project like the 710 relinquishment, City Manager's office might reach out to my staff and say, what's the history of this area? What was built on that space before the stub was put in? And the library staff provides that research to the department that's requesting that information. So we definitely see ourselves as partners with the entire city, not just access to books, which is absolutely central to our mission, but we see ourselves as a community gathering place where we can share ideas together, be entertained, and really engage in civic life together. It's a wonderful institution that's only possible because of the support we get from the community. Your residential partial tax funds 20% of the library's annual operating budget, and we're incredibly grateful for that. And it can only be collected if we maintain the level of service that you enjoy now. So we're very grateful for that. I hope I haven't missed any parts of your question.
No.
I'm looking forward to your questions.
Well, I did forget to also ask Sidney and you also, what drew you to Pasadena and then your first impressions? Sidney, I didn't give you a chance to fully answer that.
First impressions, what drew me is the national recognition, and I also thought the national recognition of Pasadena, its place in culture. It is just renowned, just for starters. But as I spoke with Miguel, the city manager, and other city staff, I really thought, given my experience in the industry, working with Midwest ISO, which is the California ISO equivalent in the Midwest, helping develop energy policy for a number of years, both at local, state, and even working with the federal level in Washington, D.C. Operations experience in both the water and electric side. I really thought that I could help. I thought that I could contribute. I thought that I could help lead a team. And so that was one of the things that helped draw me to Pasadena. First impressions are, I find myself just shocked at the sheer beauty. I may not look like one that would take pictures of roses, but I actually find myself just walking neighborhoods and just awed at the landscape, coming from parched Texas, where everything is pretty much sun-baked. It's just absolutely beautiful, and it's a pleasure every day to be here.
You made the right choice. Tim?
Thanks. Like Miguel said, everyone has a personal and a professional life. My partner's mother, at the end of her life, needed to move into assisted living, and we needed to identify a place in Southern California to move her. And Pasadena was the obvious choice. And we moved her into assisted living, and I was very interested in being close by, and I was fortunate that Library Director Jan Sanders had an opening in Library Services Management. I could walk during my lunch break to see Lenora, and she enjoyed a fantastic final chapter of her life due to the city services that she received. I cannot tell you how terrifying it was when she found her way outside of the building, and with a woman with dementia who did not know where she lived, and the Pasadena Police Department took good care of her. And to feel that level of trust and safety is something that I will never forget, and it means a lot to me. And no matter where I live or what job I ever have in the future, Pasadena will be a very special place to me. And I feel very fortunate to work here. But professionally, this is an incredible city, and the service-oriented people that work at the city are fantastic colleagues. The level of involvement in the community, supporting the most vulnerable parts of our community is something that I've never seen anywhere else. And it's exciting to be here, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Okay, so I'm going to ask one tough question, and then I'm going to ask folks to get ready. Where are the microphones? There's one right here and one right over there. And so since this is being recorded and will be shared on Pasadena Media and then through the website, we will need people to go to the microphone to ask a question. But the tough question, though, is we just talked about there's a $1.2 billion budget, and we have all these amazing city services, but we're only a city of 150,000 people. How are we going to, that is an enormous financial burden for a small city to carry. We've seen it in the Rose Bowl, trying to find ways to kind of fund their activities. What are we doing to kind of continue to deliver a high level of service, but also control the costs so that because we as residents and taxpayers in the city are able to continue to fund all the activities of the city and do it most effectively. I'll throw it to the city manager first.
Yeah, so I think I hear that question sort of writ large.
Yeah.
And the 1.2 is a little misleading because last year it wasn't even $1 billion. And so you say, how did we get to more than 1.2 billion in 1 year? That'd be a 20% increase. What happened is there was going to be a grade separation, I think, on California, moving the Metro line up above so that you didn't have to wait for the train to cross and those crossing guards to come down. I wasn't here during a lot of this time, but my understanding is they made an estimate. They thought it was going to cost something like roughly $250 million. As they refined the project and realized all the traffic that would have to go around, it ballooned, I think, I've heard, to maybe 400 or 500 million. And so finally, Metropolitan Transit District, what they call MET or Metro, said, you know what, cancel that project and we'll instead fund $230 million. And so earlier this year, we went through a process and prioritized the transit projects that are sort of related to that issue. That was blessed by the city council. They made some changes on the list. It was submitted to Metro, I always get the name wrong. And then they funded $181 million. And so that's in this budget. And it's one-time money that increased the total budget to $1.2 billion. And if you followed the math I just said, that if we had 230 some odd million, I think it's like 231, and they gave us 181, you say, what about the other 50 million? And that's what we said too. We said, wait a minute, that's 50 million comes to Pasadena. And they said, yes, but you might need it for cost overruns on the projects that are approved. And we said, okay, that's fair. And if there's money left over, we'll try to spend it on other of the priority projects on the list. And I think that's where we've landed with Metro. So it's a little bit inflated. But at the end of the day, the way governments work is you have about a little more than 300 million of our roughly 1 billion of regular revenue is general fund, and that's discretionary funds. Those are the funds that we have most ability to decide how to spend. But in many ways we don't, because you have to have a police force, you have to have a fire department, you have to have so many different functions that require general fund expense. Another big, I'm going to guess, roughly a little bit more than 300 million is water and power, right? That's it's an enterprise fund that operates separate, and so when you pay user fees for your water, for your power, that money is dedicated to that particular purpose. So we can't take user fees from water and power that you pay your bills and use that to fund other city services other than what's set forth in the charter that's allowed. This year it's going to be about 13 million from water and power that goes into the city's general fund. But roughly more than 300 million of that comes through water and power, and then the rest are restricted funds, some federal dollars, some state dollars, but all those come with, here's how you have to spend it, or here's what you can spend it on. So they're non-discretionary dollars. So really we have the 300 million, and we go through a significant process every year budgeting those dollars and then spending them as efficiently and as effectively as we can. I can't really give much more of an answer than that because it's, every day a different issue comes up, and we have to be prepared. I think the mayor mentioned about our reserve funds and how we're back fully funded. It was a blessing to see how we set aside 20% of our general fund in case of an emergency, about 5% just for sort of operating emergencies, and then another 15% for big emergencies. And you might think that's a lot, and it is, but we had to use a significant amount of it during the pandemic. And we were blessed to sort of be so wise as to set those funds aside in case something like a worldwide pandemic happens. And of course it did. So, I think it all comes down to really understanding that everything we do is spending your taxpayer dollars. I'm very well aware of that. And we do it as efficiently, as effectively as we can.
And Sidney, I think I just got the notice that the Pasadena Water and Power is going to be looking at its budget and rates coming forward. What are we doing to minimize the increase in rates because our water and power bills continue to rise?
Yeah, the space of the water and power is interesting in that we are an enterprise fund, as Miguel said. To the extent we are an enterprise fund, we do recover our cost from ratepayers from the community as they pay their bills, and that funds the utility. But the other thing that's unique about the utility, while we don't receive taxpayer funds, but we are in a competitive market, especially on the electric side. Specifically, if our rates become out of kilter with the norm, if our rates become out of kilter with our neighbors, from a competitive standpoint, it becomes unsustainable. And perhaps the analogy that we spoke to earlier, where the utility doesn't exist anymore, it gets sold off, it's showing itself to be non-competitive. We are not in that space. And we don't foresee us being in that space, and so I'm glad to report that we are nowhere near that. But that being said, commodity prices, inflation, I think Mayor Victor Gordo initially spoke about inflation, what a 2% increase in inflation might do. It challenges the water and power as well. As you can imagine, we use a lot of copper and aluminum, conductive material for electrical. Those commodity prices are changing, supply chain for key infrastructure, and then what is happening in the commodity markets due to various macroeconomics, whether it's natural gas and some of those other. So it's a very, very challenging dynamic. You asked earlier, what does a day in the life of a general manager look like? All of the above and more. It's probably a better answer.
Well, good. Well, I want to invite anybody who might have a question to, if you could come to the microphone. Oh, Tim, what are you doing
To control costs?
Keep costs down at the library.
We are able to operate on a slightly reduced staffing level with the closure of Central Library. So as people have left to move on to other jobs, we have very judiciously decided not to fill some of those positions and maintain a smaller size staff. We are sharing some costs with other departments. We have a leased space at the Jefferson School where the fire department has its training academy. The police department has an after-school program, and the library opened a children's library. So we're kind of doing some cost sharing there to save some money. And then we're pursuing external funding. We're looking for other avenues to fund projects. Those are first things that come to mind. And we're also able to offer some resources through the library through consortia, like a shared pool of ebooks, where it's not just Pasadena buying them, but other library systems. So the collection's bigger, you have more choices, and we're sharing those collections.
We appreciate it, because I think we're all feeling the pinch and want to do something. I will invite questions. If you could give your name and what part of the community you live in, and then ask a question. They said anything is fair game.
Okay, hi, my name is Sharon Washington. I live here in Pasadena, but I live in District 3, so.
That's okay as well.
Okay, thanks. This question is for Sidney. There's been a lot of talk about the power grid, with nefarious players potentially having come across the border and such, that it puts things in, for a potential problem. And especially since we have we're independent from LA's water and power. Are you putting measures in place for securing any potential problems regarding that?
Grid security, distribution security, copper theft, physical intrusion, public safety intrusion into electrical infrastructure has perpetually been a problem through the years. As you know, in California, they've had a couple instances where substations have been shot out, historically going back. All of those remain challenges. The answer to your question is yes. We are pursuing enhanced security issues. Another item that will come before our council in the coming weeks is incremental infrastructure spending just on cameras, monitoring, motion detection, but that is more and more becoming a critical issue, the security of our infrastructure, such that it doesn't impact reliability. I think there was a stretch of crimes across the nation, maybe going back 4, 5, 6 months, where we're seeing copycat attacks on substations. We're essentially big, you see the substations, I don't know how to describe them. They're usually walled off, high fences, secure areas. But fortunately, that copycat-ish has subsided. But in Pasadena, we have had intrusions. We have had challenges. We've taken immediate mitigating steps to address that. I spent, like I mentioned, I came from Austin Energy. Yeah. One of our team members used to refer to these threats, or these people that actually steal. He used to refer to them as entrepreneurs, and I always thought that was interesting, but they are resilient. There is profit motive associated with it, and we have to be equally resilient in response. And I know, Miguel, you've supported us in those efforts as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I remember seeing a story about North Carolina. I think
Yeah,
George.
thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you for the question. That's actually.
Hi, how's it going? I'm George from the San Rafael area, District 6, right? Question for Sidney. During the big rains, I saw an awful lot of water going down the Arroyo Channel. What are we doing to collect more of that water so that we have it for other use? The second question would be concerning rooftop solar. I know that the PUC seems to be trying to discourage people from putting that on. It's not cheap. It takes at least 10 to 11 years to get your money out. So it's not, people aren't really making a lot of money off rooftop solar, but it does help as far as the distribution and being able to have energy. So at any rate, so those are the two questions. Certainly, we don't want a situation summer where you can't plug in your car, you can't turn on your stove, electric stove, you can't run your AC. So how does that all play a part?
So a lot of multiple questions here, so thank you for the question. So we are looking at increasing our spreading basin, our capability so that we can recharge our aquifers, the Raymond Basin, but that is taking time. We have a deluge of water this year, unprecedented rain, so we're having these drought deluge of rain and water cycles, and those are becoming even more concerning. I think the governor's proposals have spoke to more stormwater retention, more stormwater capture, and I do think that's a statewide initiative. But we are also looking locally to do more of that, both with our public works and with the water and power. To your issue on rooftop solar, you made the statement that the PUC isn't discouraging it. I think that's a strong word. The PUC has different methodologies that they change over time, and I'm not going to speak for the PUC, but I don't know that it's fair to say that they are discouraging it.
If you basically eliminate net metering, you're not, or limiting it to a much lower rate, it could take 15, 20 years for someone to put on rooftop solar to be able to get their investment out of it. And essentially, that's what I understand is that they've dropped the reimbursement very substantially.
Yeah, you will have to speak to them. I will say that as we go through our integrated resource plan, which is our plan for the next, as we look out to roughly 25 to 30 years or more, rooftop solar, distributed energy generation, battery storage, all of those capabilities are things we're looking to maximize because we find it to be a key part of the pathway to decarbonization or carbon-free by 2030. And it is a key element, and it's one of the things that we are looking to study and to understand how it contributes within the city limits and even outside the boundaries of Pasadena.
All right, well, thank you. What rebates are available or incentives are available for homeowners who would like to reduce their carbon footprint?
So we do have incentives available. We also have a interconnection methodology, an interconnection plan. I would be best to get you in touch with the group that manages that, but it is actively subscribed. We do contribute significant fundings in support of that. We are not on the latest PUC version of the solar interconnection, but nevertheless, we do have a legacy program. We have an active program, and it is one that we feel is part of the solution.
Thank you. Who's next? Over here.
Good evening. Are we on?
Yes.
My name's Laura Labarge, and I live in the Linda Vista area. And I have a question for you about a letter that we received, and I'm sure maybe other people in the audience received it in the last week or two from the SCAQMD regarding the Shoal Canyon landfill and the City of Glendale's application to develop an LFG to energy program. I don't know what Pasadena's general relationship is to this, but we're very close to it, and they say the letter was mailed to everyone within a certain proximity because the expected emissions are above approved standards. So this was the first that we had heard of it, so I'm just curious what the city's position is on it.
Throw that to the city manager.
Yeah, so that's, as I understand it, it's a landfill that's run by the city of Glendale. And so it's hard for me to speak for that. I'm not unaware of that letter. And probably who would know about it is our Director of Public Works, Tony Olmos. So after the meeting, I'm happy to meet with you, get your contact information, and I can ask Director Tony Olmos to get back to you and provide you the information you seek.
Excellent, thank you.
Steve, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, because you know that area well.
I'm making a note.
Okay. Yes. Yes, we do need you to come to the microphone so we can hear you.
Miguel, this is a question for you.
If you could identify yourself and say what part of town you live in.
I'm Valerie Siegel. I live in North Linda Vista. I'm concerned about the parking at the Central Library. I'm very curious as to whether or not the city could entertain the possibility of purchasing or acquiring the parking opportunity there is that I think it's Euclid and Walnut. There's a building there that is for lease, and it hasn't been occupied for a year or two. I was wondering if it would be possible for the city to purchase that property and make parking available at the library. That's one question. The other question is, the roof on the library looks very challenged to me. It looks maybe like the original tile roof, and being that a lot of resources are going to go into retrofitting the library, if the roof will be part of that, and certainly the opportunity to look at it and see if there's any leaks and anything else. Also, Miguel, I'd also like to say I'm an alumni of McClatchy High School. Go Lions.
McClatchy in Sacramento, where our former Chief Justice also went to school, and our current Secretary of Health and Human Services, Javier Becerra, is also from McClatchy, so it's a very distinguished school. On the first question, yeah, we can always look at that. We're always looking to do better. I actually had a drive around with Councilmember Madison this morning, and he made a joke about the thing that will always make you look smart is if you address parking. So it's kind of funny that this question comes up, but we're always going to be looking at that, always looking at possibilities to do better. I can't make any promises. I don't know the building. I don't know anything about that particular facility, but we can look at it. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. On the library, I'm going to have to turn to Tim McDonald, who can probably provide specifics.
Thank you, Miguel, and thank you, Valerie. Let's see, do a little history. 1923 was when Pasadena voted to fund the construction of the Civic Center, the Civic Auditorium, City Hall, and the Central Library. Do you know which one was first built? The library, yeah. So we're celebrating 100 years of the funding for the Civic Center. In anticipation of the 100-year anniversary of the dedication of the library, which will be in 2027, will be that 100-year anniversary, the Public Works Department did a thorough assessment of the entire building. That's what led to the finding of the unreinforced masonry. But it was a roof-to-basement assessment that looked at electrical, fire, roofing, mechanical systems throughout the building. So this is not just a retrofit, but a renovation project. And the roof is definitely one of the critical systems that needs to be addressed, but needs to be done in a sensitive way that preserves the character of the building. So absolutely, Valerie, yeah. The roof needs to be repaired in a sensitive way, yeah.
We have time for a couple more questions, and while you get up, I'm going to ask just one question that's on my mind too. The fence along the Colorado Street Bridge. What's the plan right now? Because that's been up for a long time, and I think a lot of us keep looking at it and saying, like, what are we doing there?
That's definitely one of those that's a work in progress. We put aside in the budget, I think it's $2 million, so that's already set aside. And if it's going to cost more than that, I know it's a priority, and we'll find a way. The good news is we've hired a consultant who has expertise in this area, and my director of public works tells me he's very optimistic that they're going to do the work that they do and show different designs, and that he's confident we're going to make the progress we need to make. And so, between having the design, having a good process, an inclusive process to get us where we need to be, and the commitment on the funding, I know it's a long time coming, but I think we're making some much better progress today.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Dennis McNamara. I'm a district resident here. in West Pasadena in the South Arroyo. My question is for Miguel. We had Dr. Velasquez here representing the Unified School District, which itself covers more than just Pasadena, Sierra Madre, and Altadena. But is there a formal interaction, a formal dedication of resources so that we work within, within the city to engage with the school district?
There is. I don't recall it. Maybe it was 2018. It was before my time. But the voters here passed Measure I, which is, I believe, a 3/4 cent sales tax. I don't remember. Maybe it's 2/3, but it's a sale. It might be 3/4. Yeah, 3/4 cent sales tax, and it had a companion measure called Measure J, which was advisory. The advisory measure had the voters say, we'd like 1/3 to go to PUSD. So today that sales tax is about roughly 33 million, 32 million, something like that. So every year the Measure I, Measure J dollars, which are sales tax dollars, a little bit more than 10 million is going to the school district. So that's the formal part of it. We also have, our school district is incredibly important to the community. And so we have a joint meeting between the city council and the school board every year. I have a good, strong working relationship with Dr. McDonald, our superintendent. And part of that is my background. I think you mentioned that I used to be the general counsel for San Francisco Unified School District, and before that was actually a legal counsel for about at least 10 different school districts in the Bay Area. So I have an education background myself, something I chose to go into because of the power of what schools did in my life and sort of transformed my life. So good partnerships, working with them every way that we can. It's, I think it's foundational to the future that we have a strong public education system, and the city supports that strongly.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to give a compliment. I've been here for 68 years. I walk 5 miles a day, and over the course of this terrible rainstorm, we've had terrible potholes. I have been on my cell phone when I walk, and so Mayor Gordo, Steve Madison, the board, every time I've called, within a week, things have been fixed. Within a week. I mean, I can't get that done in my home. So I just want to say, you know what, we're always going to have challenges. There are always going to be things that we need to fix. But some of these things, the business of governing works, and it's worked well. So thank you very much.
It's funny, just the other day I was taking a tour of our Public Works Department, and there's only actually 6 people that man our Citizen Service Center. And we turn the corner and they say, and this is the Citizen Service Center. And I felt like a light shining. It's you 6? You guys do it all? Because they really are amazing. Now, it's not just the 6. They dispatch the work. It's hundreds of employees that they're so dedicated. They really want to come out and fix whatever they can within a week. And even a week is a little bit long. It's just the weather's been so bad. You have to have the right weather to be able to fix the potholes and whatnot. But that we're getting it done within a week, that's really great to hear.
So is there a question?
Yeah. I just had a question for Mr. Jackson. And
you could name it.
Sorry. My name's Rick Madden, and I'm in West Pasadena. And I apologize for the remedial nature of the question, but with Sacramento and Washington mandating electric vehicles, with Sacramento mandating the elimination of gas stoves and using electric stoves in California, I don't understand how we have the electrical generative capacity to meet these additional needs. And I'm curious, I know it's not directly your job, but how do you foresee that developing, given that we're switching to less constant and green energy sources like solar and wind?
That's an excellent question, Rick. Thank you for that question, and congratulations on being elected to the board today. So your question is about the changing demand. Let me just start with the demand. So traditionally, you just had electric appliances. Now that landscape is completely changing. It's called the electrification of all things, and it is a challenge. So you take BTUs that are traditionally gas BTUs that you put in the gas tank at the gas station. Now they are going on the electric grid. They're going on the distribution system, the transformation, the infrastructure that's needed to support that. You also have the electrification of natural gas appliances. You have the electrification of all things, trying to green the economy in many respects. It is a challenge. At the end of the day, the load goes north. On top of that, you have supply changes. You mentioned renewable, non-dispatchable resources. And again, I spent more than a decade building energy policy, trying to design this on a regional level as well. So on the supply side, you essentially have dispatchable resources like natural gas, coal, or nuclear, whatever that might be. But to the extent we're integrating, and as I mentioned, a statistic that we are becoming more green, the bulk electric system has progressed significantly from where it was in 1970 levels. But nevertheless, that resource is changing as you retire facilities. For instance, Palo Alto, nuclear facility, Palo Alto here in the state of California, plant life extension in part to address exactly what you're talking about. We need supply. I think that message has been heard loud and clear in Sacramento. As we look to decarbonize our portfolio even further, we just signed a large geothermal contract, but we need more. We need more green supply. The Palo Alto nuclear facility, which we own a piece of, which we have a take of, I should say, is a part of the issue, the plant life extension associated with that. But when we talk about local energy policy, local has a big part. Our governance, our city council has a big part in that, but we also need state, regional, and federal policy working to support that, to help give us options. So you have changes in demand, you have changes on the supply side, the generation side, and the transmission grid in between that connects the supply and demand. All of that is changing as well as you have more diversified supply. Wind, solar in different places that traditionally hasn't been. You have to connect it to the grid, and all of those flows change. The reliability of the system is quite a challenge. We are probably what I would say have the most unique dynamic challenge probably facing the industrialization of America. And we traditionally have reliability that when you hit the switch, the lights come on. The reliability that we have in Pasadena is some of the best in the nation. The reliability that we have in the energy industry in general is some of the best in the nation. For instance, I was going through the channels and a banking group was talking about the banking crisis. Long story short, they said something like, our banking system needs to be like the water system. You hit the spigot, the water comes on. Our banking system needs to be like the electric system. When you hit the switch, it comes on. That is done by strategic thought, infrastructure, facilities to get that accomplished. So we have a lot of encroachment to do to solve this solution. I think the conventional wisdom from a grid standpoint, we can get 75, 85, 90% there, but that last 10% is still a challenge. We do have emerging technologies. I actually read somewhere that they can produce, someone is doing some research at producing energy from air, static electricity, extraction from moisture, something I've read. Again, I was shocked to even read it. I've never studied, I've never seen anything like that. But emerging technologies, batteries are an aid in this space, industrial-sized batteries. Not the overall solution, but surely an aid. And again, we could, I'm sure there are college curriculums on that particular instance, but sorry for the long-winded answer, but it is a very challenging question.
Well, maybe I can make a brief addition to that. So I had the privilege of having lunch with the president of Caltech, and we were talking, and they had just done the fusion finding up and it was done in Lawrence Livermore Labs, and I said, hey, you got that going on. But I had also heard somewhere that Elon Musk was saying we could power all of the United States with 100 miles by 100 miles of solar energy. So we started talking about that, and he said, well, we're not interested in that. What we're actually working on is putting solar panels in space. because then it's always out there, the sun's always available, and there's no atmosphere. You can get some real power. And he's serious, and he said, we really are doing that. He said, now, what we're working on is how do you get the power from up there down to earth? And I thought, gosh, how special is that to be in a place where we really have people who are really working on that? It's amazing.
So we're going to go to closing thoughts. So Tim, I'd love for you to kind of share some closing thoughts and what you'd like the audience and the community to take away from it.
I don't have anything prepared. I hope to see you at the library this summer. The summer reading program starts this Saturday, runs through the summer. Go to any of your library branches and sign up. There's something for everyone. Hope to see you there.
One quick question, Tim, too. If you can't make it to a branch, what kind of online services do you offer to the community?
Many library services are available 24/7 through the website, right? So you can check out electronic resources online, a lot of support for school success, electronic resources that you can access online. You can send a reference question to us through the website, and library staff member will call you back or email you back. So yeah, I'd be happy to stick around and let people know about that, but just visit the website and you can discover a lot of those remote resources there. Thank you.
Absolutely. Sidney?
And I'd just like to just reaffirm there's a lot of moving parts in the electric and water space. We would like to hear all of your thoughts as they've come up today. There's various forums, whether they might happen at the council meetings or might happen at the MSC, the Municipal Services Committee, or some of our IRP meetings, public meetings. We do appreciate the diversity of thought. We do appreciate the wide venue of potential solutions. But the more that we hear this diversity of thought, the more that we can hear your concerns, I think the better off and the better product that we have as a community. Thank you.
I told Sidney somebody was going to ask a question of how much longer are we going to have to pay the underground surtax for our utility poles, and that hasn't come up. So, but I expect, I'm sure he'll welcome the call. Miguel.
Yeah, my closing thoughts are to just look out and see almost all of you are still here. 8:16 on a Wednesday night. And I think it's amazing to see this level of community engagement. And, you know, the theme you hear from all of us, because none of us are from here, if you listen to our stories, but why do we like it here so much? Because it is special in so many different ways. And what makes it special? It's community engagement. So I thank you for your community engagement with WPRA, with tonight. I invite you to participate in your government at all levels. And just want to once again express my gratitude for all that you do that makes this city so special.
Yeah. And I want to thank our panel. I want to thank our mayor and our city council member for recruiting this caliber of individuals to actually run the city day to day. So please join me in thanking Miguel, Sidney, and Tim, and the rest of the city staff.